Sarah Johnson parked her car in front of the fancy jewelry store called Discriminate. She turned off the engine and looked at herself in the mirror. Today was a special day. Her son Marcus had just become the CEO of TechVision, one of the biggest tech companies in the country. She wanted to buy herself something nice to wear to his celebration dinner tonight. Sarah was 55 years old with kind eyes and short gray hair. She wore simple blue jeans and a plain green blouse. She hadn't dressed up because she planned to do grocery shopping after buying the necklace. Sarah didn't think she needed fancy clothes just to go shopping. "I deserve something special today," she said to herself with a smile. She had raised Marcus all by herself after her husband died 20 years ago. She had worked 2 jobs to put him through college. Now he was successful, and she was so proud. Sarah walked into the store and looked around. Discriminate was the most expensive jewelry store in town. The lights were bright, and glass cases were full of sparkling diamonds and gold. Classical music played softly. About 10 other customers were in the store, all dressed in expensive clothes. 3 employees stood behind the main counter. They were helping customers who wore fancy watches and designer outfits. Sarah noticed how they smiled and laughed with these customers. The employees were all dressed in black suits that looked very expensive. Sarah walked up to the main display case. She saw a beautiful diamond necklace that caught her eye. It was simple but elegant, perfect for the dinner tonight. The small card next to it said $15,000. It was a lot of money, but Sarah had saved up for something special, and Marcus had given her a generous gift card for her birthday. She stood at the counter and waited for someone to help her. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5 minutes went by. The 3 employees kept talking to the other customers or among themselves. Sometimes they looked at Sarah, but quickly looked away. Sarah watched as a white woman in a designer dress walked in. Immediately, one of the employees, a tall blonde woman with a name tag that said Victoria, rushed over to help her. This is strange, Sarah thought, but she kept waiting patiently. After 10 minutes of being ignored, Sarah gently said, "Excuse me, I'd like some help, please." Victoria finally turned to her with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Someone will be with you shortly," she said quickly, then turned back to the woman in the designer dress. Sarah took a deep breath. She was used to this kind of treatment in fancy stores, but it still hurt every time. She looked down at her simple clothes. Maybe they thought she couldn't afford anything here because of how she was dressed. Or maybe it was because she was black. Either way, it wasn't right. 5 more minutes passed. Sarah was about to leave when the store manager walked by. He was a thin man with glasses and a name tag that said Richard. "Excuse me," Sarah said firmly. "I've been waiting for help for 15 minutes now." Richard looked at her with cold eyes. He glanced at her jeans and simple blouse. "The staff is quite busy with customers at the moment," he said slowly. "Perhaps you could come back another time. Or maybe you'd prefer our discount section in the back." Sarah felt her cheeks grow warm, but she stayed calm. "I'd like to see that diamond pendant in the main case, please," she said, pointing to the necklace she had been admiring. Richard raised his eyebrows. "That piece is $15,000, he said, speaking as if talking to a child. "We have more affordable options that might be better suited for you." Sarah looked him straight in the eyes. "I understand the price. I would still like to see it." Little did they know who Sarah really was, or who her son was. They had made a big mistake judging her by her appearance. Richard, the store manager, stared at Sarah for a moment. He looked surprised that she still wanted to see the expensive necklace. With a small sigh, he walked behind the counter and took out a small key from his pocket. "Victoria, please assist this customer," he said to the tall blonde employee. His tone made it clear he didn't think Sarah was a real customer. Victoria rolled her eyes when Richard turned away. She walked over slowly and unlocked the display case. She took out the diamond necklace, but kept it close to her side of the counter, as if afraid Sarah might grab it and run. "This piece is from our premium collection," Victoria said in a bored voice. The diamond is 2 carats. Excellent clarity. Again, it's $15,000. She emphasized the price, looking at Sarah's simple clothes. Sarah nodded. It's beautiful. May I hold it? Victoria hesitated. She looked over at Richard, who was watching them carefully. We usually don't let customers handle such expensive pieces without certain assurances. What kind of assurances? Sarah asked, keeping her voice calm even though she felt angry inside. Well, we would need to see proof that you can actually afford this item, Victoria said with a small smile that wasn't friendly. Perhaps a bank statement or a pre-approval for credit. An older white couple at the next counter overheard this. They looked at Sarah with pity. The woman whispered something to her husband, who shook his head. Sarah had never been asked for proof before making a purchase at any store. She knew what was happening. They were treating her differently because of how she looked and the color of her skin. I've never had to show proof before buying something, Sarah said. Do you ask all your customers for bank statements before letting them touch jewelry? Victoria's face turned red. Well, no, but... Then why are you asking me? Sarah's voice was firm but not loud. She didn't want to make a scene, but she wasn't going to be treated unfairly either. Richard hurried over when he heard their voices getting tense. Is there a problem here? He asked, looking at Sarah as if she was causing trouble. Yes, there is, Sarah replied calmly. Your employee wants me to prove I can afford to buy something before I'm allowed to see it properly. Is that your store policy for everyone, or just for people who look like me? Richard's face turned serious. Ma'am, please lower your voice. We have certain procedures for security reasons. I'm speaking at a normal volume, Sarah said. And I notice you didn't answer my question. Other customers were now watching. Richard looked uncomfortable with the attention. Victoria, please let the customer examine the necklace, he said quickly. Victoria reluctantly placed the necklace on a black velvet pad and pushed it toward Sarah. The diamond sparkled under the bright store lights. It was even more beautiful up close. Sarah carefully picked it up and held it against her collarbone. Do you have a mirror? She asked. Victoria pushed a small mirror toward her. Sarah looked at herself with the necklace. It was perfect for the dinner tonight. Marcus would love seeing her in something so elegant. I'll take it, Sarah said, placing the necklace back on the pad. Victoria's mouth opened in surprise. Richard stepped forward with a doubtful look on his face. You understand the price is $15,000. Richard asked again, speaking slowly as if Sarah might not understand English well. Yes, I understand, Sarah replied. Do you take credit cards? We do, Richard said, still looking uncertain. But there are spending limits on most cards. Sarah reached into her simple purse and pulled out a platinum credit card. It was the special card Marcus had given her with her name on it. The credit limit was much higher than $15,000. Will this work? She asked, handing over the card. Richard took the card and looked at it closely. His eyes widened a little when he saw it was a platinum card with no spending limit. He looked at Sarah with new interest, but still with doubt in his eyes. I'll need to see your ID as well, he said. Sarah took out her driver's license. As Richard compared the name on the card to her ID, his phone at the counter started to ring. Victoria picked up the ringing phone. Diamond Elite, how may I help you? She answered in a sweet voice that was much different from how she had been talking to Sarah. As she listened to the caller, Victoria's eyes grew wide. She covered the phone with her hand and whispered urgently to Richard, It's someone from TechVision. They're asking for the manager. Richard's whole attitude changed instantly. TechVision, the big tech company. He straightened his tie and took the phone from Victoria. This is Richard Miller, store manager. How may I assist you today? Sarah watched with interest as Richard's face went from excited to confused. Yes, we do have a customer named Sarah Johnson in our store right now, Richard said, looking at Sarah's ID card which he was still holding. May I ask what this is regarding? Richard listened for a moment, Then his face turned pale. He looked at Sarah with new eyes. "Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Right away, sir." He handed the phone back to Victoria and turned to Sarah with a completely different expression. Now he was all smiles. "Mrs. Johnson, I apologize for the delay with your purchase. We'll complete it right away," Richard said in a friendly voice that he hadn't used before. "Victoria, please process Mrs. Johnson's payment immediately and use our special gift wrapping." Victoria looked confused but took Sarah's credit card and began processing the payment. The card was approved instantly, of course. "May I ask who called?" Sarah said, although she had a good idea already. Richard smiled nervously. "It was Mr. Marcus Johnson's assistant from TechVision. He mentioned that you are Mr. Johnson's mother, the new CEO of TechVision." Several customers who overheard this turned to look at Sarah with surprise. The older white couple who had been watching earlier now looked embarrassed for how they had judged her. "Yes, Marcus is my son," Sarah said simply. "He's having a celebration dinner tonight. That's why I'm buying this necklace." Richard was now sweating visibly. "Mrs. Johnson, please accept our sincerest apologies for any misunderstanding earlier. At Diamond Elite, we pride ourselves on excellent customer service for all our valued clients." "Is that so?" Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's not the impression I got when I first walked in." Victoria returned with the receipt and the beautifully wrapped box containing the necklace. Her hands were shaking slightly as she handed everything to Sarah. "Mrs. Johnson, we are truly sorry if you felt unwelcome in any way," Victoria said, but her eyes didn't match her words. She was only saying sorry because she now knew Sarah was important. Sarah took the package and looked around the store. She noticed another black woman who had just walked in. The woman was dressed similarly to Sarah in casual clothes. None of the employees were moving to help her. "Thank you for the package," Sarah said to Richard, "but I'm concerned about something." "Anything at all, Mrs. Johnson," Richard replied quickly. "That woman who just came in hasn't been greeted yet," Sarah pointed out. "Will she receive the same treatment I did before you knew who my son was?" Richard and Victoria exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Of course not," Richard said. "We treat all customers equally." "Do you?" Sarah asked. "Then I suggest you prove it by helping her right now with the same enthusiasm you're showing me." Richard hesitated, then nodded to another employee who quickly went to help the woman who had just entered. Just then, Sarah's phone rang. She checked the screen and saw it was Marcus calling. She answered it while still looking at Richard and Victoria. "Hello, Marcus," she said. "Yes, I'm still at the jewelry store. I found a beautiful necklace for tonight." She paused, listening. "Actually, I've had quite an interesting experience here. I think you might want to hear about it." Richard's face turned even paler as he realized that Sarah was telling her son, the CEO of TechVision, about how she had been treated in the store. "I'll tell you all about it at dinner," Sarah continued. "But first, there's something I need to do here." She ended the call and turned back to Richard with a serious look on her face. What Sarah did next would surprise everyone in the store. Sarah put her phone back in her purse and looked around the store. Everyone was watching her now. The same people who had ignored her earlier were now staring at her with great interest. She didn't like this kind of attention. "Mr. Miller," Sarah said to Richard, "I'd like to speak with you privately, please." Richard nodded quickly. "Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Please come to my office." He pointed to a door at the back of the store. Sarah followed Richard to his office. It was a small room with a desk, 2 chairs, and pictures of expensive jewelry on the walls. Richard closed the door and offered Sarah a seat. His hands were shaking. "Mrs. Johnson, again, I am so sorry for any misunderstanding," he began. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Sarah said firmly. "Let's be honest with each other. When I walked in wearing simple clothes, your staff ignored me. When I finally got attention, I was treated poorly. The only reason you're being nice to me now is because you know my son is Marcus Johnson, the new CEO of TechVision." Richard looked down at his hands. He knew she was right. You judged me by how I look and the color of my skin. Sarah continued. You didn't see me as a person who deserved respect. That's wrong. You're right, Richard admitted quietly. We did judge you unfairly. I'm truly sorry. I don't want your apology, Sarah said. I want change. Richard looked confused. What kind of change? My son's company, TechVision, buys a lot of gifts for clients and employees every year, Sarah explained. Marcus was thinking about using Diamond Elite as a supplier. That could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in business for your store. Richard's eyes lit up. We would be honored to work with TechVision. But I can't recommend a business that treats people differently based on how they look, Sarah said. I need to know that what happened to me today won't happen to anyone else who walks through your doors. Richard nodded quickly. I understand. We can change, I promise. Actions speak louder than words, Sarah said. Here's what I want you to do. First, I want you to help that woman who just came in, the one your staff was ignoring. Second, I want you to call a staff meeting tomorrow morning to talk about fair treatment for all customers. Yes, of course, Richard agreed. Anything else? Sarah thought for a moment. I'd like to come back to your store in 2 weeks, dressed just like I am today. I want to see if anything has changed. If it has, then I'll tell Marcus that Diamond Elite might be a good business partner for TechVision. Richard stood up and offered his hand. Thank you for this chance, Mrs. Johnson. I promise things will be different. Sarah shook his hand. I hope so. Not just for TechVision's business, but because it's the right thing to do. They walked out of the office together. The store was quiet as everyone watched them. Victoria, Richard called. Please make sure Mrs. Johnson's necklace is perfect before she leaves. And Jason, please help the lady by the silver display immediately. Victoria hurried over with Sarah's package. She checked the necklace one more time and polished it carefully. It's beautiful, Sarah said, looking at the necklace. Thank you. As Sarah walked toward the door, the older white couple who had watched everything approached her. Ma'am, the woman said softly. I just wanted to say that I admire how you handled this situation. You could have gotten angry or made a big scene, but you didn't. You're teaching them to be better. Sarah smiled. Thank you. Sometimes the best way to fight unfairness is to shine a light on it and give people a chance to do better. As Sarah left the store, she felt both sad and hopeful. Sad that this kind of treatment still happened in 2025, but hopeful that maybe this small incident might lead to real change. She got into her car and called Marcus. Mom, is everything okay? Marcus asked, sounding worried. You said something happened at the jewelry store. I'll tell you all about it at dinner, Sarah said, but I think something good might come from it. I have an idea for TechVision that might help make a difference. As she drove away, Sarah glanced at the jewelry store in her rearview mirror. She wondered if Richard would keep his promise or if it was just empty words. She would find out in 2 weeks. That evening, Sarah arrived at Riverside Restaurant for Marcus's celebration dinner. The restaurant was one of the best in the city, with large windows that looked out over the river. The sun was setting, making the water shine like gold. Sarah wore her new diamond necklace with a simple black dress. When she walked in, the host smiled and led her to a private room at the back of the restaurant. Marcus was already there, talking with some people from his company. When Marcus saw his mother, his face lit up with a big smile. He was tall like his father had been, wearing a blue suit that looked expensive but not flashy. Marcus hurried over and gave Sarah a warm hug. Mom, you look beautiful, he said, noticing the diamond necklace. Is that what you bought today? Yes, it is, Sarah said with a small smile. It has quite a story behind it. Marcus introduced Sarah to everyone at the table. There were 5 other people there, all top managers at TechVision. Everyone was friendly and respectful to Sarah. No one treated her like she didn't belong, even though these were rich and powerful business people. During dinner, Marcus stood up to make a speech. He thanked everyone for their hard work that had helped him become CEO. Then he said something that made Sarah's eyes fill with tears. "Most of all, I want to thank my mother, Sarah," Marcus said, looking at her with love in his eyes. "She worked 2 jobs to put me through college after my father died. Everything I am today, I owe to her strength and sacrifice." Everyone clapped. Sarah felt proud, but also a little embarrassed by all the attention. After the main course was finished, Marcus sat next to Sarah while the others were talking among themselves. "Now tell me what happened at that jewelry store," he said quietly. "You sounded upset on the phone." Sarah told him everything. How the staff had ignored her, how they had acted like she couldn't afford the necklace, and how their attitude had changed completely when they found out who her son was. Marcus's face grew serious as he listened. "That's awful, Mom. We should file a complaint. Maybe even talk to a lawyer." Sarah shook her head. "That's not what I want to do. I have a different idea." "What's your idea?" Marcus asked. "You mentioned that TechVision gives gifts to clients and employees," Sarah said. "What if we use that as a way to change things?" Sarah explained her plan. TechVision could offer to do business with Diamond Elite, but only if they made real changes in how they treated all customers. The company could require diversity training for the staff. And most importantly, TechVision could send different types of people, old and young, different races, people in fancy clothes and casual clothes, to shop at the store and report back on how they were treated. "We could use your company's buying power to encourage fair treatment," Sarah said. "Not just at this one store, but maybe at other businesses too." Marcus thought about his mother's idea. "That's much better than just punishing them or taking them to court," he said finally. "It could create real change." "Exactly," Sarah said. "Fighting racism and discrimination isn't just about pointing out what's wrong. It's about helping people do better." Marcus nodded slowly. "It could be part of our company's community impact program. We could call it the Fair Treatment Initiative, or something like that." Sarah smiled. "I like that name." "We'll need someone to lead it," Marcus said, looking at his mother with raised eyebrows. "Someone who understands the problem firsthand and has good ideas about how to fix it." "Are you offering me a job?" Sarah asked, surprised. "More like a paid consulting position," Marcus said. "You could help design the program and oversee it. What do you think?" Sarah touched her new necklace and thought about what had happened that day. Maybe there was a reason she had gone through that unpleasant experience. Maybe she could help make sure others didn't have to face the same thing. "I'll think about it," she said. "But first, I need to go back to that jewelry store in 2 weeks to see if they keep their promise to change." "Want me to come with you?" Marcus asked. Sarah shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do myself." 2 weeks passed quickly. Sarah thought about her return visit to Diamond Elite every day. She wondered if Richard, the manager, would keep his promise to change how his staff treated customers. On the day of her visit, Sarah dressed just like before. Simple jeans and a plain blue blouse. She didn't wear her diamond necklace. She wanted to look exactly as she had the first time, to see if anything had really changed. When Sarah arrived at Diamond Elite, she sat in her car for a few minutes, feeling nervous. What if nothing had changed? What if they treated her badly again? She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was doing this. It wasn't just for her. It was for everyone who had ever been judged unfairly. Sarah walked into the store at exactly 2:00 p.m. The first thing she noticed was different was a new sign near the door. It read, "At Diamond Elite, we value all customers equally. Please let us know how we can serve you today." The store was busy, with several customers looking at jewelry. Sarah didn't see Richard or Victoria anywhere. A young man with a name tag that said Jason noticed Sarah as soon as she entered. He smiled and walked over to her. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Welcome to Diamond Elite. How may I help you today?" he asked in a friendly voice. Sarah was surprised by the warm welcome. "I'm just looking around," she said. Please take your time, Jason replied. If you'd like to see anything up close, just let me know. We have some beautiful new pieces that just arrived yesterday. Sarah walked around the store, looking at different displays. Every employee she passed smiled at her. No one looked at her clothes or seemed to judge her in any way. After about 10 minutes, Sarah approached the counter where the expensive necklaces were kept. A different employee, a woman whose name tag said Maria, came over right away. Would you like to see anything from this collection? Maria asked. Yes, I'd like to see that diamond bracelet, please, Sarah said, pointing to a beautiful piece that cost even more than the necklace she had bought. Without hesitation, Maria took out the bracelet and placed it on a velvet pad for Sarah to examine. She didn't make any comments about the price or suggest that Sarah look at cheaper items instead. As Sarah was looking at the bracelet, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Mrs. Johnson, how nice to see you again. Sarah turned around and saw Richard, the store manager. He looked different somehow, more relaxed and genuinely happy to see her. Hello, Richard, Sarah said. I came back to see how things are going. I'm so glad you did, Richard said. Would you mind coming to my office for a moment? There's something I'd like to show you. Sarah followed Richard to his office. On his desk was a framed certificate. This is from our company headquarters, Richard explained. All of our staff completed a special training program on treating customers fairly. We're the first store in the chain to have 100% of employees certified. He showed Sarah a folder with customer feedback forms. We've started asking every customer about their experience. The scores have gone up in the last 2 weeks. Sarah was impressed. That's good to hear. There's one more thing, Richard said. He seemed a bit nervous. I've been thinking a lot about what happened with you. I realized I've been making judgments about people for years without even noticing it. I want to thank you for opening my eyes. Sarah didn't know what to say. She hadn't expected such a personal response. Victoria isn't here today, Richard continued. She decided to quit. She said she couldn't change how she felt about certain people. He looked embarrassed. But the rest of the staff are really trying. We have new hiring practices too, to make our team more diverse. As they walked back into the main store area, Sarah noticed something she hadn't seen before. There were now employees of different races helping customers. That was a big change from her first visit. You've made real changes, Sarah said to Richard. I can see the difference. We're trying, Richard said. It's just the beginning. We have a long way to go. Sarah smiled. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Before she left, Sarah decided it was time to make an important phone call. Sarah walked out of Diamond Elite feeling hopeful. She sat in her car and took out her phone. She needed to call Marcus right away to tell him what she had seen. Mom, how did it go? Marcus asked when he answered the phone. She could hear the worry in his voice. Better than I expected, Sarah said. They've made real changes, Marcus. Not just small things to make me happy, but big changes in how they run the store. Sarah told Marcus about the welcome sign, the new diverse staff, and the training certificates. She explained how Richard had shown her the customer feedback forms and admitted his own mistakes. That sounds promising, Marcus said. Do you think they're serious about keeping these changes? I do, Sarah replied. Richard seemed truly changed. He understood that what happened was wrong, and he's taking steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. So, should TechVision do business with them? Marcus asked. Sarah thought for a moment. Yes, but with conditions. We should start with a small order and see how they handle it. And we should keep checking on them to make sure they don't go back to their old ways. Good idea, Marcus said. I'll have my team set it up. Sarah took a deep breath. There's something else I want to talk about. Your job offer. 2 days later, Sarah was back at TechVision headquarters. This time she was there for business, not just as Marcus's mother. She sat in a large meeting room with Marcus and 5 other executives. She wore her diamond necklace, but with a simple business suit. She wanted to look professional, but not flashy. Everyone, this is Sarah Johnson, Marcus said to the group. She's going to tell us about a new initiative for our company. Sarah stood up, feeling nervous but excited. She had spent 2 days preparing for this meeting. Thank you for having me here today, she began. 2 weeks ago, I had a bad experience at a jewelry store. The staff treated me poorly because of how I looked and the color of my skin. The executives listened carefully as Sarah told her story. She explained how the store had changed after they learned who her son was. But most people don't have a CEO son, Sarah continued. Most people who face discrimination don't have that kind of power to make things change. That's why I'm proposing the Fair Treatment Initiative. Sarah explained her idea in detail. TechVision would use its buying power to encourage fair treatment at the businesses it worked with. The company would send different types of people to test how stores treated all customers. Businesses that treated everyone fairly would get contracts with TechVision. Those that didn't would have to change or lose TechVision's business. We can make a real difference, Sarah concluded, not by punishing businesses that get it wrong, but by helping them get it right, and by rewarding those that already treat everyone with respect. When Sarah finished speaking, the room was quiet for a moment. Then one of the executives, a woman named Janet, started clapping. Soon, everyone was applauding. This is exactly the kind of community impact program we need, Janet said. It aligns with our company values perfectly. Another executive named Michael nodded. It's practical too. We're already spending millions on corporate gifts and services. Why not use that money to encourage positive change? Marcus looked at his mother with pride. So, Mom, will you accept the position? Will you lead this initiative for us? Sarah looked around the table at the faces watching her. She saw respect in their eyes, not because she was the CEO's mother, but because they valued her ideas. Yes, Sarah said. I'll do it. As the meeting ended and people started leaving the room, Marcus hugged his mother. You're going to be amazing at this, he said. I hope so, Sarah replied. It's important work. What had started as a painful experience was turning into something positive. Sarah couldn't change every person's mind, but maybe she could help change how businesses worked. One step at a time. 3 months later, Sarah sat in her new office at TechVision. She had a small team of 5 people working with her on the Fair Treatment Initiative. On her desk was a framed photo of her late husband next to a sign that read, Treat others the way you want to be treated. Today was an important day. Sarah was meeting with her team to review the first results of their work. Good morning, everyone, Sarah said as the team gathered around the conference table in her office. Let's see what we've learned so far. A young woman named Tanya, who was in charge of data collection, stood up. She put some papers on the table. We've tested 20 businesses so far, Tanya explained. We sent different types of people to each place. Young, old, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, well-dressed, casually dressed. Everyone used the same script when they went in. Sarah nodded. This had been her idea. To make sure they could compare how different people were treated when they said and did the exact same things. What did we find? Sarah asked, though she already had a feeling about the answer. 12 of the 20 businesses showed clear differences in how they treated people, Tanya said. The differences were biggest based on race and how expensive someone's clothes looked. Michael, another team member, added, The good news is that 8 businesses treated everyone equally well. We should definitely work with those companies. Sarah felt both sad and determined. Sad that discrimination was so common, but determined to make a difference. What about Diamond Delight? Sarah asked. Did we test them again? Yes, Tanya said with a smile. They passed with flying colors. Every shopper was greeted within 1 minute of entering the store. Every shopper was shown the items they asked about, with no comments about price or suggestions to look at cheaper things. Sarah felt proud. Diamond Elite had really changed. Let's move to phase 2, Sarah said. For the businesses that didn't do well, we'll send them our findings and offer them training. For the ones that did well, let's start the process of making them tech vision vendors. After the meeting, Sarah called Richard at Diamond Elite to share the good news. He was excited to hear that his store would be getting a large contract with Tech Vision. "Mrs. Johnson, thank you for giving us a chance to do better," Richard said. "It's not just good for business. It's changed how we think about people." "I'm glad to hear that," Sarah replied. "And please call me Sarah." That evening, Sarah went to dinner with Marcus to celebrate the early success of the Fair Treatment Initiative. "Mom, you've done amazing work," Marcus said as they ate at a small Italian restaurant. "The board members are impressed. They want to expand the program next year." Sarah smiled. "That's wonderful news." "There's more," Marcus added. "Other companies have heard about what we're doing. 3 CEOs called me this week asking how they can start similar programs." Sarah felt a warm glow of pride. What had started as one painful experience was growing into something much bigger. "You know what this reminds me of?" Sarah said. "When you were little and you found out some kids at school were bullying others. Do you remember what you did?" Marcus laughed. "I started the Be Kind Club and got almost everyone to join." "You were always trying to fix things," Sarah said with a smile. "Even as a child." "I wonder where I got that from," Marcus said, looking at his mother with love and respect. After dinner, as they walked to their cars, Sarah touched the diamond necklace she was wearing. The same one she had bought that day at Diamond Elite. "This necklace means something different to me now," she told Marcus. "It reminds me that when people know better, they can do better." Marcus nodded. "And sometimes they just need someone like you to show them how." Sarah drove home that night feeling like she had found a new purpose in life. At age 55, she was starting a new chapter, turning pain into progress one business at a time. 1 year had passed since Sarah's difficult experience at Diamond Elite. It was a warm spring morning as she got ready for a special event. She carefully put on her diamond necklace, the same one that had started everything. The necklace now felt like a symbol of positive change, rather than a reminder of discrimination. Today, Sarah was giving a speech at a business conference about the Fair Treatment Initiative. Over the past year, her small program had grown into something much bigger than she had ever imagined. Sarah arrived at the conference center early. The large room was already filling with people, business owners, managers, and community leaders from across the country. They had all come to learn about Sarah's program and how they could use it in their own companies. As Sarah waited backstage, Marcus came to wish her good luck. "Nervous?" he asked with a smile. "A little," Sarah admitted. "I've never spoken in front of so many people before." "You'll be great," Marcus assured her. "Just tell them your story like you told me." When it was time, Sarah walked onto the stage. Hundreds of people were watching her. She took a deep breath and began. "1 year ago, I walked into a jewelry store to buy a necklace," Sarah said, touching the diamond at her throat. "The store employees ignored me because of how I looked and the color of my skin. They only changed their behavior when they found out my son was a CEO." The room was completely silent as Sarah told her story. She explained how that painful experience had led to the Fair Treatment Initiative. "In the past year, we've tested over 200 businesses," Sarah continued. "We've helped 50 companies change their policies and train their staff. And we've seen real improvements in how people are treated." Sarah showed slides with data from their program. The numbers proved that businesses that treated everyone fairly actually made more money and had happier employees. "The most important thing we've learned is this," Sarah said. "Change is possible. People can learn to see past their biases. Businesses can create cultures where everyone is valued." After her speech, many people came up to talk to Sarah. One man stood out from the others. It was Richard, the manager from Diamond Elite. "Mrs. Johnson, Sarah," he said with a warm smile. "That was an excellent speech." "Thank you, Richard," Sarah replied. "How are things at the store?" "Better than ever," Richard said proudly. "Our business has increased by 30% since we changed our approach. But more importantly, Our staff is happier. We all feel good about how we treat people now." Richard handed Sarah a small gift bag. "This is a thank you from all of us at Diamond Elite." Inside was a beautiful bracelet that matched her necklace. Attached was a note that read, "Thank you for helping us see everyone's true value." That evening, Sarah had dinner with Marcus and her team from TechVision. They celebrated the success of the program and discussed plans for the future. "We're expanding to 5 more cities next year," Tanya said excitedly. "And 3 other major companies have started their own versions of our program." "Mom, what you've built is amazing," Marcus said, raising his glass in a toast. "You turned one bad moment into something that's helping thousands of people." Sarah smiled. "I couldn't have done it without all of you." As Sarah drove home that night, she thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. She had gone from being a retired teacher to leading a program that was changing how businesses treated people. She had turned pain into purpose. Sarah realized that sometimes life's worst moments could lead to unexpected opportunities. The discrimination she had faced was wrong and hurtful, but her response to it had created ripples of positive change that were spreading farther than she could have imagined. As she touched her necklace one more time, Sarah thought about all the people who would now be treated with respect and dignity because of what had happened that day in the jewelry store. "Every person deserves to be seen for who they truly are," Sarah whispered to herself. "Not judged by how they look or what they wear, but valued for their character and humanity." And that simple truth, Sarah knew, was more precious than all the diamonds in the world.